Once again, if you want to catch up on any previous episode, visit us at www.coderconvos.com or email us at coderconversations@gmail.com. I'm your host, Kevin.
And I'm Brian Russick, professional drummer, drum teacher based out of the Suffolk County, Long Island, New York area. If you'd like to book a lesson with me, I could be reached at brianrussick.com.
And joining us today is FAANG engineer Yuriy Semchyshyn, formerly of Apple, Google, and also AWS. Hopefully I got that right or got close.
Yeah, well, very close.
Very close.
Hi, everyone.
Awesome, yeah, man. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Yes, pleasure to have you on today. So yeah, just to get things started, you have an extensive career in software spanning over 20 years. Can you walk us through your journey through software? What got you into software and how did you end up where you are at today?
So my journey started back in teenage years. Always loved calculators, computers, electronics. Spent most of my time tinkering with them. And when it got to university, it wasn't really a thought for me. It was very obvious that I want to do something with computers. So I did my bachelor's, master's, and PhD back in Western Ukraine. Spent a couple of years in outsourcing. Well, I started with a couple of years in a small startup product company, then a couple of years in outsourcing company with United States customers. Then I got a job offer in 2012 with Amazon in Seattle. They moved me there, spent a few years with Amazon, moved to San Francisco Bay, worked for Google for 5 years, and then moved to Austin, Texas, spent a couple of years with AWS and last 5 years with Apple. And last few months, I am happily unemployed. I finally have time.
Nice.
Finally have time for family and for personal projects and thinking about what is that I'm going to do next.
That's an awesome place to be in.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were at quite a few pressure cooker companies. I know, like AWS, Google. They seem like they're pretty rigorous in their engineering standards and the day-to-day workflow.
Yeah, it was each different each company was a very interesting experience, and they were different and different cultures, different technology stacks. But it was interesting to look from the inside.
What can you say about the culture at Apple? Just from your experience.
My experience probably was a bit unusual because I spent 5 years in an infrastructure organization dealing with Apache Cassandra. And Cassandra is open source project, and we contributed a lot to open source. So for us, it was different compared probably to most other teams who work on proprietary products.
Awesome.
But in general, it compared to my previous experiences, yes, I felt a lot more accent on secrecy and information security and like or building organizational hierarchies. Like it felt like more old school, more of an old school company to me.
So just for the audience's sake, Cassandra, that's a database. Is that correct? Open source database?
It's open source, NoSQL database management system, which was, as far as I remember, it started somewhere in Facebook around 2005-ish, I guess. And as of now, Apple is the largest user of Cassandra. They have largest deployment if you count number of hosts. And I think Netflix is the second largest.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. So, yeah, like you being a staff engineer on this project, like what did you have to do differently compared to being a senior engineer on other projects? I know maybe more diagramming, getting teammates together, et cetera.
That's very counterintuitive, but again, it's my personal experience. I bet other people in other organizations would have different experiences. but to me, this last work, it was more of hands-on work, more of coding content, individual contributions, and some of them were complex and took a long time, like months, many months, and many thousands lines of code. But it was mostly focused on individual contributions, which is unusual. I did more of design work in my previous teams, but I enjoyed that as well. So it was good.
Awesome. So, just comparing some of the companies that you've worked at, like, can you explain the culture at the different companies? Like, what ways were they similar, and in which ways were they different? And like, if you were to form your own company, what would you take from each company's culture and implement it in your company?
That's an interesting question. I would love
Great
to.
question. Yeah, Kev, great question.
I guess what I enjoyed a lot back at Google, and Google might be different now. I am not sure. It's been almost 10 years since I was there. So I really enjoyed the openness. Like you have whole of Google's internal source control, Google 3, you have all of that except for very few proprietary, like secretive projects. But by default, everything is available to anyone, and you just can go there. And if you happen to be interested to see what, like, the specific widget on search page, what does it look like on the inside, you go there, you see its source code, and if you're inclined, you can submit a patch, and this team will review it. So this amount of internal openness was amazing, and I spent probably more hours than I should just looking at other teams' code, just because I was curious. And I like that. I think it stimulated a lot of innovation when people can just, when they have a bit of free time, look into areas they are not formally assigned to, and just figure it out. I think it benefited the company a lot.
To have that openness, right?
Yeah. Have everything available to everyone by default, and if there is a specific business reason to hide something, then it gets through the process and is not available.
Okay.
And that's more or less opposite of what Apple does. So every team is very much compartmentalized, and you seize your own repositories, and if you need to access someone else's, you need a business reason and go through the process. Like, you're not seeing anything by default.
Oh, okay. Very different.
And I imagine it's slows things down a bit, but it's also probably much better if you want to maintain some kind of, whatever it's called, operational security or secrecy, have enlighten and surprise your customers, or whatever it's called. And also, what I would take here is a degree of autonomy. Both Amazon and Apple are similar in that teams can individually decide more or less what technology stack they want to use. You want to go and implement this specific tool with Scala or whatever exotic language you want. Sure, if your team and manager are cool with that, you can do that. And it's very different from this uniform monorepository technology stack Google had with just 4 approved or blessed languages. And if you need to go outside of 4 blessed languages, you need to have a good reason to do so.
So you kind of like the ability to choose your own technology versus having it mandated to you or having these confines.
And have the team, the people who actually work on the technology, have freedom of choice of whatever they want to use.
So, like, from a team perspective, how did y'all pick a technology stack? Like, what was the evaluation process of which tools to use?
You're asking about my most recent position?
Sure.
It wasn't. When I joined it, the team was well established and they already had a bunch of stuff written. And with maintaining Cassandra, it just makes perfect sense to use Java, because Cassandra is written in Java, and it makes sense to do most of the things that can be done in Java. Follow that. We had a few old things written in Scala. I happened to rewrite a couple of classes. There is some Python as well. But generally, I would say that it was either following existing patterns or, I guess pretty much.
And so how do you like Java? I actually went to school for Java, so it's interesting you say that.
I do like Java. I started back in the school years. I think the first programming languages I learned were Basic and Pascal, which are no longer relevant. Or
Right. Right.
Then my first actual job, which I got paid for, was in C# and .NET, and I loved the technology. I liked the C#. I guess it was days of .NET 1.1 to 2.0. I liked it, and then after moving to the US, I switched to Java and have been using Java mostly whenever I can for the last 10, 15 years.
Oh, wow.
I like the Java. I wish it was. I wish they were more open to expanding languages and introducing new constructs like C# does. But I think the focus on backwards compatibility is somewhat misguided. Like, it doesn't matter that much in practice. But there is community. It's maintained for like 30 years. So I think it's wonderful technology.
Yeah, like for me, I had a really hard time with Java. I eventually switched over to JavaScript, and that just, I don't know, when something just clicks, JavaScript for me, it just clicked, and I was kind of, okay, let's work in React, let's work in Angular, kind of went down that road.
It makes perfect sense if you're doing web UI,
web dev,
programming.
Yeah, web dev.
In my career, I haven't dealt with UI a lot. I think it was a bit of Windows Forms, Win32 programming in the beginning, and then last 15 years, I did almost exclusively backend development. So I'm not very good with modern UI technologies.
Yeah, it could be a bit messy. So like with you dealing with such a large and established code base, and you just joining the company, how did you like manage to break it down and understand the code base? And then once you started contributing, how were you able to make sure that you weren't breaking anything when you were contributing new code?
I guess so. First part of the question is figuring it out, and for me, what I like is actually being able to run code locally and put breakpoints into it, and just if there is some complex place I don't understand, stop there, look at what variables are, what's in the stack, what's going on, and just look at the code and imagine that I'm the interpreter and try to figure out what's going on. I wish relying on documentation was more common, but most teams I've been in don't really keep documentation up to date with this actual state of the things. So yeah, running code locally, being able at least run tests locally, if not the actual thing. And as far as introducing changes go, I guess unit tests, automated pipelines. Most places I worked in already had extensive continuous deployment or continuous integration infrastructure. So you just see how exactly it's done here and figure things out.
Right. And so you would also probably have test engineers, people that are just focused on testing. Is that right?
Yep. That was surprising to me, because back in my outsourcing days, back in Ukraine, we had very structured teams. We had software engineers, we had test engineers, we had individual build engineer who was just responsible for preparing builds and deployments. And all of the big tech companies here in the US, none of them had that. It was generally software engineer, and you're supposed to do everything. But like you write your code, you test your code, you deploy your code, and all of that is up to you end to end. And initially, it felt less productive to me because it felt like it's wasteful process to spend more time instead of having more narrow specialization and have people do everything more efficiently. But I got used to it, and I think it's also helpful in terms of ownership. Like, you know that, for example, if there is something not completely clear, and more efficient way would be, I don't know, implement it exactly as written, and then hope for quality assurance engineers to confirm that's what actually needs to happen. And here, it's going like it's still you. So you go figure things out up front and have higher sense of ownership. So probably it makes sense.
Okay. One thing I would wonder is when you're not working, off hours, what type of projects do you like to work on? What type of projects do you contribute to? Or is that something that you don't do at all?
That's something I'm starting to do recently. I last many years I haven't really had time to work on personal projects, and even when I did, um it was, for example, working at Apple. There is a process for open source contributions, and working on Cassandra, I could very easily contribute to Cassandra and to Apache repositories. I wouldn't need I basically needed my direct manager's approval for that, and that was it more or less. Uh, for personal contributions, I would need to go through the submit whatever I want to publish on GitHub for community consideration, and those can take half a year or a year easily. So it was
Oh, wow.
theoretically possible, but practically more or less infeasible to publish anything unless you like getting fired. So
Right.
so
So
yes, and sorry, what I'm doing right now, I am finally focusing on things that are neither important nor urgent. So I have a couple of small pet projects doing computer generated art. So I just exploring that.
Nice.
Well, that's pretty interesting that you mentioned the difference between like software and how the software teams are constructed in Ukraine versus US. I'm finding something similar in that you're expected to know more of the process end to end. Like these companies I've been working at, I'm having to learn about how to deploy the code on the server, almost like DevOps and all of these other things are getting mixed into my responsibilities. And I
Mm-hmm.
agree. Like initially, I didn't really like it because I'm technically being hired as a front end engineer, but I guess in the long run, it's better because it helps me understand the whole process of software, like how it gets from just my local computer and it actually becomes deployed. So, do you find now you having to touch the other aspects other than like what you're initially hired for? Do you find that really helpful in you understanding the full process of software, like having a more comprehensive view?
I think yes, it contributes. It helps to have more complete view because for me personally, I guess making fixes and actually writing code, it was easier part for me. I enjoy that, and it keeps my focus, keeps my attention. I really like working with code. When it comes to DevOps part and doing deployments and watching metrics, like this is the part that I find pleasant. But going through with that, and it gives you better understanding of what actually happens to your code after you deploy it.
Yeah, I also find like in my current job, I'm having to do, create more documentation, more diagrams, learn the DevOps, pretty much software end to end. And even though I wasn't hired for that, I think it's good because it gives me more experience and it allows me more opportunities in the future. Like I'm no longer just because in software, it's easy to get trapped in one sector. Like, okay, I'm just a front end engineer, and I feel like that's kind of dangerous, especially how quickly technology changes.
Right.
I think it can be dangerous, but some people make it work. So it's the question of whether you want to be a generally software engineer who can figure things out and are not tied to any specific domain. But I also saw people who are very deep into one specific area, even if it's what you mentioned about front end and UI, like people who really understand one specific framework extremely deep, and they also make career out of that, and they do just fine.
Yeah, I think it ultimately comes down to just making it work for you. So, like, what in your career, what has worked for you? Like, what were some of the strategies that help keep you afloat in software?
I am not sure I got the question. What strategies do you mean?
Okay, so like for example, for me, um, thoroughly understanding the frameworks, that really helped me stand out. Like on the interview process, for example, one thing I learned is if they ask you to solve a problem, they're more interested in how you think versus you solving the problem. So being able to
Mm-hmm.
talk your way through the problem as you solve it and explain like how you solve the problem, what your thinking process is. That's something else I picked up.
Mm-hmm.
Some other strategies I picked up is just because you're paid for a certain role, you don't necessarily want to confine yourself to that. So like if you're just paid to be a senior engineer, but you're getting architectural responsibilities or managing a team, like, and you're not necessarily getting
Mm-hmm.
paid for that, take it anyways, because that's gonna allow you to eventually get those other roles. Just like, just different things that you picked up during your software career that
Mm-hmm.
have helped you progress.
Yeah, I think a few things that really helped. I did a lot of competitive programming early in high school, university. Throughout the years, I've been in a couple of competitive programming teams, and I later, when I grew out of that, I helped organize local competitions. So I was exposed to a lot of those competitive kind of questions early on before LeetCode existed or Top Coder was popular. Like I did that and just happened to be doing that earlier than most people. So that was extremely helpful. And I sincerely enjoy those. I enjoy competitive programming, and I enjoy software, the big tech style software interviews. Like I could just do them for fun, not even looking for a job.
Yeah.
And also one other thing, I think I tend to have more academic approach. I did 4 years at PhD program, so when I see something that I don't know, instead of looking at what exactly it does, I try to figure out what it is. Like, what does the word mean? Where did technology start? How was it initially used? And when you see those like fundamental parts of the technology, it's much easier to understand what's going on, why the code looks the way it does. So doing some amount of more fundamental research before jumping into practical implementation.
It would be sort of like, let's see, learning, let's see, what is that one? jQuery, learning
Mm-hmm.
jQuery, and then jumping over to React. What would you think that would be like for the developer?
I'm not sure about front end technologies. For example, like several years ago, back at Google, I never worked with Go language before, and then I got into a project which was written in Go and was supposed to be developed in Go. So what I did, I discussed this with my manager. Took a few days and just sat there. I read whole Go language specification, and I don't know. I don't know if it's the most productive way, but for me it feels right, and I enjoy it. I start working with new language. I read who invented it, when, and how. I go get white paper or language specification, and I read all of that. And then I have this model of the language in my head without having used it once. Then I go and look at actual code, figure it out, and it feels like going this way helps because instead of finding things, unfamiliar things, and being surprised or confused by them, you already have model for all of it in your head. So it's much easier to figure things out going from there.
It sounds to me like you just have a really comprehensive, feel on all of this that you've developed over the years. Can you speak to that at all?
I don't know if it's maybe just personal preference. It really helps me to feel more comfortable and more confident if I have this basic knowledge first, and it enables me to move forward instead of jumping onto something that I don't know, don't understand, and feel confused by it.
Right. Like people say, oh, just, please hit the ground running. We're going to bring you in and you got to hit the ground running. You got to jump into the code base. And, I was in a situation like that. They threw me over the code base. They said, okay, we need these, feature A, B, and C built out. And I'm just like, I don't even understand your code base. There's no notes. And it was just a big mess.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, it happens.
yeah, I'm guessing like your fundamental understanding, just really breaking down the technology, diving into the fundamentals of computer science, just that ability to research and then form a model that enables you, like in the situation Brian mentioned, where there's no notes, there's no documentation or limited documentation, that enables you to solve the problem and have a more comprehensive understanding of what's going on, and also avoid errors that may be produced like edge cases. I know, like, for example, JavaScript, there's a lot of gotchas that if you don't know the language, that it could trip you up. So, um, oh yeah,
Yeah,
go ahead.
I remember seeing a few videos about how counterintuitive JavaScript is. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like from you getting your PhD and just from your academic background in software, how much of that was practical in your career versus more the theoretical side?
I As far as my scientific research goes, I don't think it was very relevant. I spent 4 years, and the work I was doing uh, it was building some algorithms and software for solving large systems of linear equations in parallel on several computers at the same time. So if you have very large matrix, say 150,000 variables, and it doesn't even fit into memory on one machine, how to split it into parts, solve each part independently, and then merge them together. And that was a lot of work. Like,
Yeah. I'm
go,
thinking to myself, this is a lot.
it was a lot of it was not that much of actual software engineering as it was a lot of process, preparing papers, getting them peer reviewed, going to conferences, presentations, presenting your results, having like courses, and doing teaching stuff at the university. Like, it was not as much of software as of everything around it. And by the end of that, I was so done with all of that that I never looked into using any of that, and never actually used any of that practically. So I don't think that really contributed to my career, or maybe it did in non-direct ways somehow. Uh, but I think having the degree helped me at least with immigration authorities in the US. Like, having one degree too many always helps. And also, so yeah, I think what I did with competitive programming contributed more to me as software engineer, and also just being enthusiastic about coding, and doing a lot of personal projects and figuring things out. uh, I wish I was as motivated as enthusiastic now as I was 20 years ago. But I
Easy to say that, yeah, in hindsight, right?
yeah.
So Yeah, I'm sure you've met like a lot of really interesting people at these companies, very intelligent people. What are some of the lessons that you've taken from some of these great engineers at these top companies?
That's very, yeah, that's very good question. People in most companies, people are brilliant, and some teams are just extraordinary. And what was hard for me, and I saw other people struggle with this as well, is that a lot of people have similar backgrounds. They go to school, they are good at computers, they excel in academics, they are first in their class, they like graduate at the top of the list, and then they join this company, and everyone is like that. And you keep those expectations from yourself, and like in this competitive spirit, but it becomes so much harder because everyone is selected for that. So it can produce both very positive and somewhat unhealthily competitive environments. I saw both. I and also contributes a lot to I think you heard about, like, you probably discussed this previously with imposter syndrome, right? When you start something and you have those expectations for yourself, and then it seems like you're just not making it. Like
It's like a
you're not good
mountain.
enough.
It's like a mountain to climb up, right?
Yeah, and everyone around you being so smart contributes to that. It makes it harder to feel happy about your work. Sorry, I forgot what the question was.
Oh yeah,
About
just
people.
some of the lessons that you've taken from some of these other great programmers or managers or other workers at these companies.
But I saw a lot of interesting people and doing interesting things, like inside and outside of technology. So that was, I enjoyed that part.
So, like, just taking a step back a little bit from a team level, like, what did you see from an excellent team compared to just like an average team? Like, what was the difference?
Um, it you feel, it's like you know when you see one, right?
Yeah,
You know the feeling, but it's difficult to for
put
me
it in words. Yeah,
to put my finger onto what causes this, what causes one team to feel good and another to feel harsher. Might be relationship
mm,
between people, like what the system of incentives are, and how comfortable people feel to actually like expose non-professional sides of them, like. And
yeah,
it it probably doesn't seem like it contributes a lot directly to the process, right? The fact the idea that I know about my teammate, that like his hobby is that he owns a plane and likes flying a plane, but once you know this about them, you have the different, more friendly relationship. It's easier to work together once you feel people. uh,
yep, yeah. I definitely agree with that. I would say, like, for me as well, is just like clarity, like everybody knowing what needs to be done. The requirements are clear, and yeah, like you mentioned, the personal aspect. Uh, you know, I believe it creates more of a bond, more trust, so that if something needs to be done, people are more willing to like spend time outside of work working on it, or you could kind of depend on your teammates more if you have a relationship besides just some business relationship.
mhm.
Yeah, I definitely.
and And I think also what contributes to that is the system of incentives. How exactly is performance managed as a company? How bonuses, what are they called? The required, like, yeah, the system of incentives built in company also can make it or break it as far as trust goes.
Yeah, that's very true. You mentioned an interesting point about there being like so many great people. They all have a similar background. They love computers. Typically, they're competitive. They're probably, at these top companies, they're probably at the top of their class. They're always known as being the best or one of the best. Now they're in an environment where they're potentially a smaller fish. So no longer are they necessarily the best. So in that environment, how did you control your competitive spirit to where you didn't allow it to kind of destroy you, since like you might not be the best of the best anymore, but you didn't allow that to affect you mentally? Like, how are you able to manage that?
It it is some difficult and scary sometimes, but generally, I guess just reminding yourself that's how it's supposed to be. You're just starting here. This is new environment, new code base, new technology. Nobody expects you realistically to know everything on your day one. So asking a lot of questions and not being afraid to appear stupid, or even intentionally making something stupid at the beginning, and realizing, okay, that was, I did that, and that's okay. Nobody cared, so I can just focus
Right.
on learning things.
Right.
Yeah, I think like for me, it required kind of programming my mind. Like even with this podcast, one thing I say is don't worry about the numbers. So like at a company like that, you're around so many smart people. That's countless learning opportunities. That's countless ways of getting better. The only way you could get better is if you're around people that's better than you. So while you might not be like on an ego standpoint, the top of the pile, you're learning so much more because these people have been places that you may not have been intellectually, and since you're working with them, they're pulling you up there. So that's kind of how I look at it when I'm out of waters.
And I guess it's also a lot of things depend on the manager. Some
Yeah.
people are very good about cultivating relationships within their team, and some people tend to focus on technical aspects and are not as aware of what's going on, how people feel about each other. I personally never managed anyone, so and I guess I would like to believe that I would make a reasonably good manager, but it's probably because I never tried.
Is
Yeah.
management something that you're open to going into, or would you prefer to stay on the technical side?
I thought about that, and maybe at some point in the future, but right now I'm trying to just distract myself. And one thing I'm starting is I'm looking into career coaching.
Mm.
So it feels like there is a fair number of people who struggle with interviewing process, or feel stuck in the careers. So I think I'll try to do that and see if there is any interest in my experience being shared. And I guess it's one of the things I also enjoyed in all of my companies. I did a lot of interviews.
Yeah.
I probably over the course of the years probably did few hundred, 200,
Wow.
500, I don't know, few hundred of interviews. And
Wow.
software engineers tend to not like doing interviews. So whenever there
Yeah.
was an opportunity and there was like someone had to volunteer, that was me. I did all of them.
Yeah, you did it. Okay.
So, like for the interview process at some of these FAANG companies, like what do you find are the key areas to focus on? I know a lot of people mention data structures, algorithms, system design.
It depends a lot on the company, on the team. In general, Google used to do hiring through a hiring committee. So hiring process was more or less separate from the team you're going to end up in. So there was uniform expectation for a software engineer at that level. They were interviewed, and committee would decide whether or not they hit the level. And if they do, they get matched with the team. And that's completely unrelated. All of the hires are expected to be the same. It was a bit different with Amazon. Amazon and AWS, there was a team match happening before the interviewing process, so the person would know more or less which team they are being hired to. Sometimes it would be a split loop, so there are two opportunities, and would be a loop of interviewers from two different companies, and hiring managers and would participate in the process, would take the ultimate decision, and there would be a bar raiser, person who is specifically trained to to make sure that there is some amount of uniformity between organizations. So that if the team really wants someone, but they are very obviously not hitting the bar raiser would prevent this hire from happening. And back at Amazon, I went through bar raiser training, never finished it though. Another opportunity presented itself, but I was in that role for a bit, so I know how it works. And compared to Google, there is the hires are more specific. So specific team has more say of whether they want this person or not. And at Apple, it's another extreme. Each team is hiring for themselves, and there isn't even a desire to keep requirements uniform between organizations. So each team is free to hire however they want and ask whatever they want.
That's amazing.
So that results in more freedom to individual teams. If they want this person, like, for example, highly specialized person who only knows this narrow area very well, they can be hired. It's no problem, but it comes at the expense of all the hires being different and makes horizontal mobility within the company very difficult. If you want to transfer from one team to another at Google, it's generally a simple process. If the employee has good performance reviews and have been around for some number of months, they can easily move around without even having their manager to sign off on that. And another team feels safe because they know that this person meets the same bar, uniform across company. At Apple, it's not the case because this person was hired for this specific team. So another team who wants to hire them usually goes through the full loop of interviews. So the interview process for internal transfers is just as complicated as for external hires.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, I don't know, for some reason, I really enjoy this part of work at large companies, participating in hiring activities.
So yeah, like participating in hiring activities, I know like typically the interview at these bigger companies, they're more theoretical. It may not be directly applicable in what you're going to do on a day-to-day basis. So somebody that gets hired onto the company, what do you feel is important to be able to get them up and going?
So I think at the very minimum, if we're talking about software engineers, it is just to get in at any level, you're expected to know at least one modern programming language well. It can be C#, Java, Python, something else, I don't know, Kotlin maybe, whatever the company uses or can understand. So you need to be proficient in at least one language and have strong computer science fundamentals, generally understand what algorithms are, what data structures, what their runtimes are, general approaches to sorting, graphs, number theory, all of that. And it doesn't have to be very deep knowledge, but you at least need to be familiar with all of that to some extent. So that's bare minimum for getting in. And then on top of that, if you're talking about higher level senior engineers, staff engineers, the higher you go, the more important design rounds become. So knowing modern design practices, distributed systems, consensus algorithms, all of that, it becomes more important as we're talking about more experienced candidates. And of course, behavioral rounds. That's what I personally struggle most with. They often feel very performative or superficial to me. You know, those kinds of questions like, tell us about the conflict you had and how you resolved it, or I don't know. in the very worst case, it's why do you want to work for our company? Like those kinds of questions. But they are sometimes important. I guess Amazon has this whole thing with their leadership principles. There used to be, I think, 12 of them, and now it's 14. Or is it 16? I don't know. So you're expected to at least know those leadership principles and follow, like understand them and be able to find signs of them in your previous work. So that's a bit of mind game that I personally don't enjoy, but it is expected that if you're interviewing, you need to be prepared for that as well.
Yeah, I know. Back when I was doing tech work, well, working with, I guess, React mostly, I did get an opportunity to interview for Amazon, and pretty much, they hit me with, okay, we're gonna have two medium leak code problems, and you need to solve at least one of them. And I told the
Mhm.
guy right off the bat, I said, look, I'm really not great with data structures, algorithms, leak code problems. It's just not really, it's not something that, not that I haven't focused on it. I've tried to focus on it, but it just never clicked for me. And the guy just said, oh, well, just do your best. And I basically just, told them, okay, like we could just call it a day right now because there's no way I'm going to be able to answer these questions.
What did they do? Did they cut it short or?
Yeah, we cut it short. Yeah.
You see, it's struggle many people have, I think, and it's not always. I don't think it's. Some companies go very like they have very formal requirements. They give you for two problems for 60 minutes. You're expected to do both of them. I heard things like that are somewhat common at Facebook, Meta, but generally when I was doing interviews, it was never about you coming up with or the candidate coming up with some specifically expected answer. It's to see if this person can think about problems and how they do that. And even if you have zero experience with that, are you willing to try, and what your thought process will be? And I would adjust my expectations accordingly. Like if I see that the person does not have a lot of experience, okay, can they reason themselves through to the very basic case, like at least the least performance solution? But I agree with you. A lot of people are like they tend to focus on formal requirements, like pass or no pass, instead of understanding what people are thinking. Yeah.
Right.
So like over the course of, go ahead.
Yeah. No, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, no, I was just saying like you worked on all kinds of problems during your software career. Like, did your software career match up to what you expected to be working on, or what you really wanted to work on, or did you kind of end up working on just problems that that they're not particularly interesting, but they're just part of the job?
I had a lot of that, and I had a couple of projects that I intentionally got into and I enjoyed tremendously. But I guess more than half, majority was just like everyday work that's not super exciting but needs to be done. Teams that or not teams, projects, specific projects I really enjoyed. I guess my first project in my career working for a 5-person startup company, it was back in Ukraine, and we were doing data visualization tools. So back then, Microsoft Analytics Services it might still be used, I'm not sure. So it was an online analytical processing database where you can pre-aggregate stuff from your Microsoft SQL Server. And then if you want to run analytical queries and see, for example, if you're a store company, how many of red products were sold in this specific branch during weekdays of March, or like very, very complex specific queries, you can get those processed extremely quickly because all of the results are pre-aggregated in multi-dimensional storage. And I was doing visualization components for that. We used .NET, we used DevExpress, and we were building our own interactive WinForms controls with all the like highlights, drag and drops, and all of that. Figuring out how to work with message queues in Windows, it was interesting to me, and I enjoyed this visual part. So I created this, and this is bright and colorful, and you can move it, and it's responsive. It has double buffering inside, all of that.
Right.
So that was enjoyable thing. Another project I really enjoyed during my time at Google, I joined into Gmail. Then we got reorganized into ads, and ads was one of, like, it was like super important for Google. That's where the revenue comes from. But it was also super serious, super competitive, and not very exciting. So I got out of there, and
Yeah.
transferred internally into a satellite imagery team. It was a startup which Google acquired, and they built and launched two satellites into low Earth orbit. They were taking pictures, and those pictures needed to be received through ground stations, decrypted, processed, and fed into Google Maps pipelines for image processing.
Wow.
And I was there. I was in ground software team, so I was working on software for actually extracting metadata, processing those payloads. So how it looks, you would receive a file, basically a special format of encrypted archive, which is full of specs, and also some amount of metadata about what it is, where satellite was, what it was doing. And we did a lot of Go and some Python for extracting the metadata and putting them for analysis into different places.
Right.
So yeah, so the idea that I am touching data that came from satellites, it was super exciting. I really enjoyed that. It didn't last long. I think it was a year and a half, and then it got sold to another company.
Okay.
So now that you're free to pretty much choose your next opportunity, what kind of problem domain do you want to go into, or like what kind of company looks appealing to you?
I am trying to not think about that right now. I have a huge backlog of things from the last probably 10 years. Family related personal projects, and as I said, like, this thing with time management, where you're supposed to organize ideas into urgent, non-urgent, important, not important, and everything that is not urgent and not important you just throw away and never do it because you don't need to. And now I actually want to spend time doing that. So I am enjoying my time off, and I guess and thankfully I have savings, so I will eventually need to work again, but I can afford to not work for a year if I want to. So I'm just focusing on things I enjoy.
Awesome.
So yeah, to kind of close it out, so you've had this extensive software career. Now you have all the free time in the, I want to say in the world, but you have a lot of free time to explore your passions. Uh, so aside from family, what are some of the other things that are just as important, if not more important, than career to you now?
Uh, I that's a very difficult question. I don't know. I guess that's also feels very important to me at the moment. I'm having a bit of midlife crisis. I am 40, going to be 41 soon, and it feels like I I focused a lot on career and was somewhat successful with it, but it still doesn't feel super satisfying. It feels like there has to be more to it, and I'm trying to figure out what it is.
So pretty much in the exploratory phase of life, trying to redefine what really fulfills you.
Yeah, and yeah, as I said, I have backlog of things I wanted to try, and
Right.
I try them, and I find out that some of them are not enjoyable. I didn't need them, but I had to try and see.
I mean, you never really know when a passion of yours is going to take over. For me, when I was working in tech, I really didn't enjoy it. Programming. I really just I don't want to say I didn't take to it. I did understand a lot of it, but it wasn't the most interesting stuff. And now I'm teaching drums primarily, and that's one of my passions. I love to teach. Like you're talking about, you want to teach. It's you get this amazing feeling when you transfer intelligence into another human, and then you see them do this thing that they couldn't do before, and then they're excited, you're excited, and just I love that part of it.
And I imagine that working with music, music is artistic medium, so it must be super satisfying. You don't have all the limits of engineering imposed upon you.
Exactly, and it's you're self-employed. You're working for yourself. You're setting your own schedule. It's it's a pretty nice situation to be in.
Yeah, good for you. I saw that you're doing drum lessons. I never played any musical instruments. So
It's best to, I'll be honest, it's best to start young. I started at 14. I know people, I'm teaching a kid right now. He's, I think, 9. He started at 8. Other people start at 4, but when you're older, it's way harder. I don't know why that
mhm,
is, but I have a new student. She's, I want to say 45, 50 years old, and she's having a pretty rough time with the coordination, getting
mhm.
the right hand to link up with the left foot and then the right foot with the left hand. And this is doing that on the hi-hat and this is doing this on the snare. It's just, it's a lot to take in. Ultimately, like very, very quickly, you're shown this, like, okay, this is the beat. I want you to play this. So it's very specific, but at the same time, it's complex for a beginner.
Yeah, I can't imagine doing what they show with having two different frequencies in two different hands. Like for example, having this number of beats per minute with your right hand and different number of beats with your left hand. I can't imagine doing that. My body doesn't work this way.
Yeah, so I think what's really amazing is, we may take one path in the journey of life, but we never know where it's going to end up. So just the exploratory process, just appreciating the journey is hugely important, not always just a destination. So who
Mhm.
knows, you might end up in a field someone completely different from software. You never know.
I will figure it out. I
Yeah,
I'm giving myself till the end of the year to know what I want to do.
Awesome, man.
that's great.
But yeah, we definitely appreciate you being on the show. The hour flew by. Before we get out of here, did you want to leave our audience with any closing thoughts?
I appreciate you inviting me. It was my very first time on a podcast,
No,
and
wow.
it's even better than I imagined. Thank you.
It's fun, right?
Yeah,
Maybe that's your next venture, starting your own podcast.
we'll see. We'll see about that. Yeah.
But we'd like to thank everybody for tuning in. We'll catch y'all next time.
All right, thanks, guys.